Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Land Development Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Glick. And if this is your first time tuning in, we have people on the show who are associated with the land development and real estate industry and hear their origin story and also just hear about some of the projects that they have going on. And today we were mixing it up a little bit. So we have the most people we've had on the show at the same time. So I'm actually joined by 3 different people today, all from Team IRG. And so I have Junior Ibarra, Ryan Cahoy, and Manny Toribio. Thanks for joining, guys.
Heck yeah. As we were saying earlier,
Hello.
you got to roll the R's, right? Ibarra.
Yeah.
That's in Spanish class. We're joking about that. No one does that actually, but
If I was going to do it authentically, that's what I would do. And I failed. I failed at the intro. All right. So I was doing a little bit of research coming into this, and I think I was trying to paint the picture of your guys' story before we had the conversation to see if I'm right and how it went. But one thing that stood out to me that was interesting is that both of you went to Iowa State, and you both have engineering degrees, industrial and mechanical. And so why, how did we get to the point we're at now? So that's kind of where I want to go with this, is like rewind back and talk about, also interested if you guys knew each other in college, but like rewinding back to those days of what your plans were when you were going through school. I mean, going to be engineers, and like now you're not, doing engineering things necessarily. Maybe it comes in handy, some of the knowledge and everything, but I'm interested about the two of you and how you went from that point to where we're at today. And then Manny, we're going to get to you. We're going to get to you in just a minute here, but I want to start with, this is Junior and Ryan that we're going to be hearing from here.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, Manny plays a big factor in the whole as we transition into land development. So it'll be cool when he jumps in here. But yeah, I mean that takes us back to 2010 essentially when Ryan and I met. So we were both interviewing for the same engineering role at an oil and gas company, a global company called Compressor Controls Corporation. And I usually start off telling the story, and then Ryan takes over here. But our boss back then, Jim, told us that they had interviewed 20 plus engineers for this one role that they had in mind, and they narrowed it down to us 2. And he said, you guys were completely polar opposites, like different types of engineers, and we couldn't decide on who to hire. So we just decided to hire both of you, right? So now we look back and we joke about it because we're like, oh man, you know what? They probably had one salary in mind. They divided it into 2, and we're the 2 suckers that took it, right?
We were suckers.
And so, yeah, I'm a big believer, in the big guy upstairs and putting people in your life for a reason, and just the blessings that come along with being involved with people and that come across your life. And I'm so grateful for that happened to us, right? Yeah. And so that's when we started training with engineers from all over the world, right?
Yeah,
for
all
6
over
months.
the world.
And then
India,
what happened?
Russia, all that stuff. So we got to learn from one of the best engineers in the world, right? For these control systems that control, $1 million machines that have throughput that's like $3 million of product a day, right? Gasoline, all that stuff, right? BP, all that stuff. So we got to learn from them, and really they sat us down, and these control systems that ran these huge machines, they ran so well that people forgot about them, right? They ran in the background for 30 years, running on the same like chip as a Nintendo, right? That's what was running all these algorithms, right? So they tasked us with finding these people and saying, hey, this control system's obsolete. You need to find these people again and see who's the decision maker, and then you have to sell them a new system. So that's where that kind of aftermarket, collaboration went with you and me. We had to figure that out, find out these people. The companies had changed names multiple times. People retired, right? Like the guy on the paper that bought the system in 1978 is not the same guy anymore. So it was like we had a lot of investigative work to do, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I'm glad we had 2 minds, right? And 2 different personality traits, because they were just like, well, here's, 600 clients that we haven't talked to in 30 years. And if their controller goes down, they are going to lose millions of dollars of production on a daily basis, right? And they're like, but we don't know who works there, So
That's a good hook, is like that, right? Like, you're going to lose millions of dollars. Who do I need to talk to? It's
Yeah.
kind of more of an easy sale that way, If
Yeah.
you kind of could go start at the guard shack at these plants, and then they're like, yeah, I need to talk to someone in charge
yeah,
of this.
sometimes we would even talk to the security guard. That's our first phone. Like we would go on Google Maps and literally like put the little guy on the ground and be like, "What's the sign and what's the number say?" and start our way. Right? They taught us how to like find the decision maker. Right? I forgot one of the books that they were teaching us, but essentially like we were technical enough to, once we got to the engineer, then we would explain like what our controllers are doing, right, and what's going to happen if this defaults, right, and then explain to them, here's our aftermarket product to help you transition from this old technology to the new technology. And so it took us literally 8 to 12 months just to get to the decision maker over the phone, and then that's when we started traveling and going all over North and South America to all the actual oil refineries and shaking hands and establishing relationships. So a lot of that was a lot of great lessons learned to eventually when we became business owners. So how did that transition happen, right? We were doing so well inside the engineering firm, like they assigned us our own assistants, our own paralegals, because we started selling a lot of product, a lot of services. And we're like, man, we work so well together. What else can we do?
So wait, hold on. Did you guys know each other in college, or you just
No,
met? So you went to
I
the
was a
same
little
school. You overlapped a little bit while you're there, it
Overlapped,
looks
yeah.
like, but you didn't meet each other until you both started this job together. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. After we got trained, with those other engineers from around the world, they went back to their countries, and then we stayed here because this was like global headquarters in Des Moines and Urbandale, Iowa. And again, I'm so glad that we had two brains to like, so that, because they literally was like, here you go, figure it out, right? We taught you the technical stuff, now go get us business. And we're like, okay. So we started like, we think so differently. So we started really like fine tuning our own process internally and creating our own systems, leveraging their systems and just like collaborating on notes and discussions and dividing territories just between us and things of that nature, and piggyback off of each other when we got to a certain person or this or that, and just starting to mold that yin and yang relationship that we always talk about to this day, right? And so I'm that person that that extrovert, I guess you could say, like that really you can put me in front of 10 people or 500 people and I'll go out and work the room and make friends with everyone, or go, if you put me on stage, I'll find something to talk about, right? And create energy. I love creating energy. And yet Ryan is like at
The
least
opposite of that, for sure.
and what I always like to say, he's at least 30 times, if not, I feel like it goes up by 10% every year of how much smarter he is than me. He's the meticulous guy. He's like, okay, Junior, yeah, we're going from steps 1 to 10, but in order to actually execute, we need the following systems, the following tools, the following people, and we need to invest the following time, the following energy, the following money. So in order to make that void of steps 4, 5, and 6 in order to cross to 10, right?
Yeah.
So
No, that's cool. And I think it makes for that very good business relationship when you can have that opposite side to you, the person that's really good at the things you're not good at and everything. And I was going to ask you, what are those superpowers that you have? And you just explained that. So in your story right now, we're at the point where you're still at this firm together. And do you start having conversations while you're there about being able to branch out and maybe start something on your own?
yeah, and maybe Ryan jumps in on like he always talks about all the stuff I was doing on the side.
Yeah, like
Okay.
Junior always had a side hustle, right? Like that was your life. You were selling, I forget what's that stuff called, like not Aveda.
It was like Amway,
you were selling vacations,
World Ventures.
And then one day he came to me and he's like, I kind of want to like buy a rental property and get into real estate. And then that was the first time that I'm like, oh, that's actually is something that I'm interested. That sounds interesting because there's like cash flow behind it. There's numbers behind it, not multi-level marketing
MLM,
scheme,
yeah.
right? It's
And
not
I
a
failed at
multi-level.
all those, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was
It was the
always
first not MLM scheme that you came up with. So that was that first property we bought, right? Is 2555 Maury.
Yeah, 2555.
Still have it.
Yeah.
And that was the first property we ever bought.
What year was
together.
that?
That was 2012.
Okay, so that
2012.
goes a ways back then.
Yep.
Yep.
So that's, yeah, like I was always looking to, since I was 13, like I was flipping cars, you know, I had multiple like newspaper routes, and then I would hire my friends to run the multiple routes for me, and I would pay them. So I always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I think got it a little bit from my mom and dad, because they also had some of that within them. And so I was always looking, how do I generate additional streams of income, right? And we had both also read Rich Dad Poor Dad after school, like after engineering. I actually started reading books I wanted to read versus what I was assigned. And that's Rich Dad Poor Dad really opened my mind. I'm like, oh, cash flowing assets, make money while you sleep, right? And we're like, okay, that's the common denominator in all these books that I started reading. And then Ryan, we were sharing like content back and forth is real estate. Like the common denominator was most people made their net worth the highest through either buying real estate or owning businesses, to where eventually you even take that money and invest in real estate, right? So we're like, how do we get into real estate? And so that's when we started looking for properties on, like back then, instead of Facebook Marketplace, it was Craigslist, right?
Yep.
And so we actually started looking for mentors, and we started emailing. Like my theory was like, if you had multiple properties listed either for rent or for sale on Craigslist, you were an investor. And so we started emailing everybody like, hey, let's sit down and grab coffee, right? And out of those 100 and something plus emails, like 6 actually like said yes, called them, and out of those 6, 2 still, you know, took us out for coffee, right? And that's another person that maybe one day can be on here, but one of them was Dave, right? And the other one was Caleb, and actually Steve too. Eventually we met through Caleb or whatnot. But the very first property we bought from was with this younger individual who, he was only like 3 or 4 years older than us, and he showed us a lot of properties, and we ended up buying one. But we were like, how the heck do you own 30 plus properties? Like, and you're only a few years older than us. And that's when we started learning, like he had a mentor, which was his dad, who was a multi-generational business owner, right? And just thought differently than what we're used to, or maybe accustomed to thinking when it comes to how to make money, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning of our real estate investing journey.
Okay. So what year did you kind of officially form your business and make this a real business? So you obviously were doing some of this stuff as maybe a side hustle while you were still doing the day job. At what point did that flip?
Yeah, so Jane Dar was our first company, like
Jane
Junior
Dar was
and
our
Ryan,
first company, first
very
property,
creative,
right?
right?
I think we bought 3 properties in 3 years maybe, and then ran out of money.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when you talk that story about Ron and meeting those guys, that's kind of how we accelerated that. But then you went full on, right? Like he left the engineering firm to pursue entrepreneurship 100%. And I was like, you're crazy, dude. Like, you got to proof of concept first, and then maybe I'll talk about it. But yeah, that's when you went off and did like project management and selling houses on contract.
Yep.
And meeting up with those investors and really diving deep into that stuff.
Yeah, once we started buying properties, I got the bug. Like, I was just like, this is awesome. Rent is due on the 1st of every single month, right? And like, you know, I was making engineering money, which I grew up with very little. First generation immigrant American, you know, parents working 2-3 jobs, and just admiring the work ethic. And I owe a ton of like everything, honestly, to my parents for helping us, you know, come to this country, because I was born in Mexico, and just being able to provide it. This is the greatest country in the world, and what you put in is what you get out, right? And so I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I want to quit engineering to go pursue entrepreneurship. And he's like, you're crazy, right? Like, you follow the American dream. Like, you went to school, you went to engineering, you got a job. And he didn't give me his blessing for about 6 months. So that's also when we had like a lot of management turnover at our company, right?
Oh, yeah, true.
And I was like, man, some of these guys have been here 25, 30 years. They just got let go because of a new CEO taking over. And guess who got all their workload? Like us younger guys, because, well, they're paying a lot less to us. And I was like, dang. And I felt bad for the human aspect of like, they either had to leave Iowa to get paid the same amount of money because there's not a lot of oil and gas here, and they were specialized oil and gas engineers, or they had to stay and take a huge pay cut in order to keep their kids where they're going at in school and stuff like. And most of them decided to stay and just take huge pay cuts, and you could just hear the struggle, right? And in that regard, and just or not the struggle, but there's the challenges that you'll have to overcome when you have older kids in high school and college and having to pay for that, right? So I was like, man, do I really want to stay here and have that happen to me? I'm going to pursue something. And the way I convinced my dad finally was like, hey, Dad, remember when you were an engineer and a college professor in Mexico and you gave all that up when the U.S.-Mexico amnesty was in the early 90s in order to come work in Iowa at a meat packing plant and just to put food on the table to give us a better life? Well, I'm not going to that extent. I'm going to still stay in Des Moines, Iowa, and I speak both languages, unlike you when you came here, and I can always fall back on engineering if it doesn't go well. And then from there, he was like, "Okay, you got me, son. You have my blessing, right?" And then I told Ryan, I was like, "I'm going for it. I'm quitting."
Like, and no, you're my half of my person.
And I started working for that guy who sold us our first house, like. Him and his dad are like, why don't you come work for us? You helped us. Another thing we did, we were project managing some of their properties nights and weekends when we weren't traveling just to learn. And then some other things we were doing is connecting them, especially I had a lot of connections to the Latino labor force, and I was connecting them to them. And so like, why don't you come and project manage? We'll teach you how to invest in real estate, work to learn, not to earn. That was the first time I heard that. We're not going to pay you engineering money to come and be a project manager, but you're going to learn how to invest in real estate. And so I decided to take the leap of faith and take that, make a fifth of what I was used to making as an engineer to go learn how to invest in real estate. And that's when I quit. We did 60 properties in 1 year. I was able to essentially cut like 40 of them stayed with them. 20, I was able to get sweat equity. I had no money back then, right? Yet I brokered a deal where I'm like, can I earn my way up into equity into this entity using your money and the resources I helped introduce you to? And back then I owned like 10% of that company, which was the second company that opened up of those 20, where we were buying houses, selling them on contract. Because I grew up where a lot of my family got taken advantage of, unfortunately, where they would buy a house on contract, but then their interest rates would skyrocket after 2-3 years, or they would balloon,
yeah,
and they didn't
balloon after like 2 or 3 years, and there's no way they could refinance out or had to stay.
Yeah, so I was like, I told my mentor who was funding everything, I was like, I want to sell on contract, but I want like a fixed rate, no balloons. I want to provide a good product, still a good win-win-win for everyone, and still make money on it, but not take advantage of people. And so that's what started that company. And 2013, 2014 was like the last tailwind of like the foreclosure crisis. So you could still like drive up and down the street and just find houses 60 cents on the dollar, right? And I mean, looking back, we're like, we should have bought a ton more.
If only we would have had any money back then.
Yeah.
But that's, and in 2014, everything else shifted though. Like the foreclosures literally dried up like within a month. And our money mentor and partner, he said, stop buying properties. Like, let's just sit on this portfolio for 8 to 10 years and see how it seasons out. And that's when I'm like, oh crap, I don't have a job anymore. So what else can I do? And I was at that time looking for engineering jobs. And yet by then I already had my wife and everything, and she had made it through beauty school. And I told her, hey, babe, I know I made the least amount of money I've ever made, and I've worked the most amount of hours I've ever worked, yet I had the most fun, right? and I owe a lot to her, to Trish, and in the regards, she was like, well, you helped me through school. I know I'm not making a ton, but we can live off of my income, just like we lived off of your income, right? And so she's like, go out and figure out what you want to do. And so I took a 2-month hiatus of like learning, soaking more and more content back up to learn what was the next thing. And that's when I came across the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, right? That was in 2014. And I said, Ryan, look, I found a business in a book. He's like, another business, right?
Tell me all about it.
Another MLM or something, right? And I was like, no, this is how to build $100 million team, like buying and selling real estate. And I was like, I'm going to do this instead of accepting these 3 other engineering job offers I was just given. And because Trish said she's going to support me, right? Like we're going to live off of her, $9 an hour. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. And so he's like, well, go for it.
I fully support you.
Yeah, He's like, you'll be my realtor, right? Like, well, for our houses we're buying. That's what he said. And so, yeah, I was like, well, how hard is it to get a license? And it's really easy, right? In most part of the country, 60 hours, pass the test, done. You're licensed. You're a professional real estate person that knows all about real estate, which is, not true. But so got that, and I just said I started interviewing brokerages, all the different brokerages, all the big name brands, and then interviewed with Keller Williams. And so and just so happens Gary Keller was the one who wrote The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. So I was like, why not join the brokerage the book that I'm following this? Because all I saw there was the systems and models of how to build $100 million team. And I was like, I can adhere to the systems and model. That's the engineering me, and the rest of it is just work. And I know how to work, right? And just stay super disciplined and focused, right? Page 27 says do this. Page 67 says do this when you get to this level. And then you add this talent when you get to page 124, right? So, but first you got to sell. And so got my license in 2014, May of 2014. May seems to be like a month where a lot of things happened in my life. It's a trend. I like to look at trends and things. But so May, and so that's when I started that. And so that was the beginning of Team IRG, 2014.
Okay. So you start the company in 2014, and when you first made the leap from full-time job into this, I'm curious what was, if you can remember back. I know it's been a number of years here, but like, do you remember what was going through your mind at that time? Because you have steady paycheck to now your new thing, where I guess you were doing some work, but it wasn't the same as what you were doing before. Mm-hmm. But you also detached from the thing, you went to the thing that you really wanted to do. So there's certain feelings that you get when you make that type of leap as well. Do you remember what that was like?
Absolutely terrifying, right? Like I was just like, man, I'm gonna fail my wife, right? I'm gonna fail my dad, my mom, my little brother, right? Because like, again, there's a lot of weight. I was like that 7-year-old translator, right? Like I was the one helping my parents budget, like get car loans. Like I had to grow up pretty fast, and so just like that weight is like heavy, right? Like when my family had problems, not just my own parents, but my uncles and my cousins, like I was that guy who knew how to solve problems or look for resources to bring those. So I had that weight. Yeah, I'm like, man, I do know that it all, like just like my dad did, you just got to work hard. And I remember him telling me one day when we were pulled up on like 6th Avenue and University, and the guy comes up and knocks on the window and says, asking for money. And my dad gives him a McDonald's sandwich. And I remember like it's yesterday. He looks over at me and he's like, hey, if we can help people, let's help them. God puts us on this earth to help people. Yet also, son, like if we're here to, like God also tells us that we have control of what we can go after, and working hard works, right? And so he's like, I don't even speak English, right? And I'm putting food on the table. And so, son, this is the greatest country in the world. He just looked over at me. He just wanted to teach me a lesson, like learn, how to work, right? Follow in my steps. And if you work smart, and I'm not a believer in work smarter, not harder. I'm a believer in you work smarter and you work harder. And then there's no way you're not going to succeed, right?
Yeah.
And so that's my philosophy. And I knew that if I just dove in and did what I knew how to do and the values that I knew that I grew up with, that we were gonna build something awesome. And so that was the beginning of Team IRG. And the book said that most agents or the successful agents in that book, because all it was a bunch of stories of very successful agents who build $100 million teams and bigger. And the common denominator is like, we showed up at the office every single day and we did the right activities and the right results happen, right? That really kind of encompasses life in general.
Yeah, it's the process.
Right.
Yeah, you're following the process.
And so the book says lead generate and find business every single day from 9 to 11 a.m. And I was like, sweet, I'm going to outwork everybody. I'm going to show up at 7 a.m. at the office and they're going to get there at 9 and I'm going to be ahead of them, right? And so I would show up every single day at 7 a.m. in the office and I'd open the doors thinking that everybody shows up at 9 a.m. in the realtor world. No one shows up till about 2 p.m. Right? And so, yet I was just like, well, the book says this, I'm going to do this, right? And so I just stuck to that, even though the first 6 months, I only closed 12 deals. Well, in my head, it was only 12 deals. I didn't know that the average solo agent only sold 2 to 4 deals in 2 years. And I was just building that momentum, right? And just by sticking to showing up every day, doing the right activities, and I know the right results will happen. And so the book just said, set 3 appointments a week and everything else will fall into place. So I had these little markers that would go from, appointment set, right? And I would discipline, like if I didn't hit my 3 appointments by Friday, I would not go out that night with our friends, like we were young back then, no kids. And I would just either stay really late or come in Saturday morning till those 3 appointments were set. And so now that's the philosophy. And then 48 deals the next year. That in 2015, essentially, I went from that. And then I was like, every time I would do a closing, I was sending a selfie to Ryan. Like, I was like, look at this, like another closing, another check, right? And I was like trying to like I don't know what's the word for it, like
Sell me.
Yeah, seduce you.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, this is working, and I know that the book says it takes 23 years to build $100 million business. That's what it says. Yet I know if we put our superpowers combined, we can do it in half the amount of time. So it took 2 years before he came on board in 2016 for us to truly divide and conquer. And I always saw him as a business partner. He came on as a partner. And then that's where Ryan takes over.
All right, before we get into yours, we are going to take a really quick break here, and then we're going to come right back. So stay tuned. We'll be right back in a second. All right, we are back here after that quick break. So where we left off was with Junior going through and talking about the first couple of years with, starting Team IRG and basically working on trying to get Ryan to come into the company. And it sounds like that's where we're at now in the story is when you decide to make the move. So why don't you take us from there, Ryan?
Yeah. So Junior, after talking, I don't know how many hours we probably talked about it and stuff like that. And just kind of like how Junior talked about these engineers that we had worked with for so long, been with the company for 25 years, suddenly having to figure out their life again. Just it weighed on me as far as I want something that at least I can control. I've always wanted to do something, on my own or something that I can call my own. And I finally convinced my wife. At the time, my wife was 8 months pregnant when I made this decision.
Oh boy.
And I was told my wife, I have to do this. And if I fail, I don't care. At least I know I tried, right? Do something different. It's not engineering. It's completely different. I always liked to work on things mechanically. I'm a mechanical engineer, right? But ultimately, it wasn't a passion for me to do that. I like to figure things out. I like puzzles, that kind of stuff. So I'm all right, let's figure some puzzles out with Junior. So made that decision July of 2016. And about a week in, that's when my son was born. He was born 5 weeks early. So I had to leave for 2 weeks. I said, I joined and then I had to leave. But yeah, going into that was, like Junior said, we were doing 48. He was doing 48 units a year. And me being more of an analysis person, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell is this stuff? I'm trying to figure out who the players are. I'm trying to do the engineering thing, what we did at the the CCC, right? Who's the players involved? And I'm like, there's like 60 people involved in a transaction, literally 60 people or so, right? And trying to figure out what everyone's jobs was. And that's kind of where I came in and tried to like gather all the information, get our first system set up, a process in place for stuff. And that's really where, let's see, what that was 2016. And I feel like in 2018 is when we first started our first like additional agent, right?
Yeah, we did, and we ended up doing like 100 units, just Ryan and I going to town.
So just the two of you on the team
Yeah.
at that point. Okay.
Running with our heads cut off, right? Like we're like, put signs in the yards, pick up checks, like, manage 60 people behind every single, 30 to 60 people behind every single transaction, the paralegals, the attorneys, the other agent, the coordinators, all that stuff, right? Like there's a lot more involved in a transaction than a lot of people see. So mad respects to all the agents out there that are putting in the work and doing a lot of deals, right? It's a lot of freaking work for one person, right? Which is why most agents sell 10 to 12 houses a year, even after 10 years in the business is the average, right? According to NAR. So we were doing 100 deals a year, just running with our heads cut off. And we're like, it's time to start growing, and adding more support. And so we kind of divided and conquered. I took over sales and he took over operations, right? And that's when we really started growing, right? And started having additional sales agents to support all the lead flow coming in, and additional operations to help with all the back end and the transaction coordination, and started really growing the team based on how the book was mentioning, right? And so that was all residential to that point. Up until where the commercial and the land started really this being a land podcast is like starts giving it some shape. In 2018 I met Manny Toribio, right? And through the Latino Center of Iowa, right? I'm always looking for opportunities to give back to my roots, right? And that was one way of like trying to connect with other industry leaders that were Latino and just seeing how we can give back and continue to help our community. And that's when I met Manny, and I was like, holy smokes, this guy, first of all, he's really tall for a Latino. Very handsome, tall, dark, and handsome, right? And just like, this guy has a lot of awesome energy. So I clicked right away with him just from a person-to-person perspective. And then I started seeing him do his thing from afar. Like I was like, boy, and he knows a lot of people, a lot of connectors. So that's when I met you, right, Manny? So.
Yeah, it was a good time. We had a good time. Latino Center of Iowa is still going strong. Give a little plug out to them. They've done a lot of good work on the back end, working on setting up a Latino film festival here in the Des Moines area for Iowa specifically, and we're continuing to grow out. We're in our 4th year now. So Junior was on there for a little bit and pivoted back out really to focus on the business on his side with growing the residential. And like he said, my background really, and Ryan, we've connected, prior to, everything cooking with your company, just understanding how I can give back and provide connection to those throughout the community of all business type. My background and my focus is biz development with an engineering company, SCH, right now. And we really talked heavily about what my role with Team IRG would be, and it really kind of just came down to building relationships, which I do with SEH, and so we kind of came up with a plan which would come to allow for my licensing, which I carry, which helps on a lot of fronts, Team IRG on SEH as well, and it's really just kind of exposed us to a lot of great conversations on what development is, stuff that, Ryan, you're digging into, what the needs of development are. And really what we started really early on in our mastermind, I mean, at one point we were talking about starting a credit union bank because we were trying to understand this massive need for housing and the shortage of housing caused by many, many factors we wouldn't get into now. But the idea of why not be a vessel for those that need housing that maybe are undocumented or have lesser than credit or just no credit. And primarily looking at our people, Latinos, more in this case, those of a diverse background. But we talked about that. And we got a lot of support in that arena from those in the credit union space. And we also realized that's a shiny object. We talked about that, Ryan, where you're just chasing things. And so we stepped back from that and continue to think about what can we do locally to really grow, ourselves as people and community impact members. Obviously, with that grows Team RG, and with that grows relationships with SEH. But we stepped back and just said, well, how can we just continue to understand the needs of those that are trying to grow businesses that have less of an understanding, whether it's, Board of Adjustment, P&Z, council, permitting, and have that barrier, which is in this case the speaking barrier. And we just started really diving in deep with my governance background. So my background, quick story, grew up in Iowa, born in Texas, parents from Mexico, ultimately ended up really doing what I went to school for, which is local government, being a city planner, then city administrator with my master's in public administration. And just understanding that relationship. And, I think when me and Junior started talking about going kind of larger and understanding how to make impacts, I think the first thing I said to him is, you got to get political. And he's like, nah, I don't want to do that.
He didn't say that.
It's not my arena. I said, man, if you want to do what you want to do and get the opportunities, and Ryan, this, you got to get into politics, because you got to drive action through policy, and you got to drive action through dollars in that policy, through trust and execution. And so that's kind of where we got into, is understanding, what impact could I make just to provide that, I call it the coaching of governance to those that are in need of understanding, working the system. And that sounds bad, but working kind of the processes that are in place by city governments. So City of Des Moines, I worked for 8 years, smaller communities I've been involved with, and understanding kind of the relationships that take place with the council members, the mayor, and even just kind of the sensitive approach that you have to take to that with an open mind and not a heavy hand. And then also not a victim mentality, because when you start taking that victim mentality, you're not getting anywhere with that opportunities for discussion with people you feel like really can make a difference in the community. And you just kind of fast forward to now, we've helped a lot of small businesses get established within their spaces for restaurant, help people purchase land for their actual growth of business. And then, I think the largest one came out of a team out of Utah, development team, that really just wanted to understand how they could give back to the community through providing workforce housing, community in general. And it just came down to the idea that they liked that I had the governance background, Junior had the 10 years and support from KW and the real estate background, to go look at some land just outside of the Des Moines area here in Norwalk. And have helped them and guided them through the process of many things, just working through one final easement process to essentially allow them to have 120 acres to develop on for a community that they envision that they're doing outside in other communities in other states. So it's just been really exciting, really fun, and that we've learned. We're learning, and the process and the systems and the understanding of how to go about the development world, which is very complex and very very unique, to the point where, again, connecting them to people that are appraisers, because they want to get a head start on the financing and things that you may be able to dive in more into there, Ryan, because it's not an easy process. And if everybody knew it, they'd be doing it and probably making those financial gains.
Yeah. No, I think that, it's a good background, because I didn't know some of your history and your background and kind of what the types of things you're working on. And I think having that knowledge from the municipality side and understanding like what goes on within there. I have a lot of these conversations, and when I have them, a lot of the complaints and issues that people are running into seem to happen when there's a disconnect between a city or some sort of government and the business, right? So it could be a lack of a relationship with them or understanding how the process works, or maybe it could be that certain municipalities are putting additional steps in place that are making it more difficult for businesses to operate within that city. And so I imagine you having that knowledge and that history with it kind of helps you better navigate a lot of those situations as you guys are continuing to grow your company.
Yeah. No, what's awesome is I've always been a big believer in partnerships, right? There's power in people, right? Like you, Ryan, are, the only Ryan on this earth, right? Manny's the only Manny on this earth. And this Ryan.
Except for the other Ryan. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for picking me.
And then I'm the only Junior, right? And we're all unique, and we all have our God-given gifts and our superpowers. And when you put those powers together, it makes some awesome masterminds and opportunities to focus on where the overlap is, to really hone in on the focus, and what you focus on expands, right? And so that's what I like to do when we do find people that we align in values of faith, family, and then business, is how do we all win, right? How do we create a win-win strategy, and how do we take it from step one to step two? And that's where we immerse each other, right? Like even this group of three right here, when it comes to even just thinking of this development journey that's been 2 years in the making almost, in order to get it to the point where it's going to close and push dirt next year, right? And then 600 houses will come from that is going to be in the affordable price point and help lots of entry level, community members, right? Within that, there's been like, oh, hey, Manny will be like, all right, Junior, I'm gonna talk to these people because we need to talk to the city governance, and here's how all these puzzle pieces are gonna play. They know the development game, but he has the relationships and knows a lot of who to talk to, when to talk to them, and then he'll be like, all right, but now I've taken it to this. Now you go and talk real estate, residential real estate to this person, right? And I'm gonna take to this person, right? And then we get to a certain level, and I'm like, oh my God, we need to create a system for this. And I'm like, Ryan, we need your superpowers. And how do we integrate the systems and the tools? Because now we need to have a repetitive thing for when this comes into fruition, right? To the point where he met with the development team and said, here's how, when we start pushing dirt, here's how our team executes, right? And even to the point where they're like, can we hire you as a consultant, right? They asked him that
for a price.
And then employ the sales team, right? The 15 residential agents on the team for when it does time to sell and market. And we have in-house marketing specialists on our team. We have in-house listing coordinators. Like, our agents don't put signs in the yards. They don't go into the car to pick up checks or this or that. We've taken 80% of what doesn't make an agent money and added talent. I always like to say there's 6 variables that solve any problem in any business, right? Time, money, and energy on one hand, talent, tools, and systems in the other, to some form or capacity, right? And so then we look at how we integrate that within our Team IRG ecosystem. And so, like, Manny coaches me when it comes to like integrating into politics to make sure like I don't say something that I wasn't supposed to say, or say what I'm supposed to say. And then I'm the same way when it comes to real estate, right? Like, there's an opportunity to, when it comes to real estate, this is how we're going to negotiate, or this or that, right? So I don't know anything else. What would you add to that?
No, nothing really. I think that, just pulling it all back, I think the really focus for Team IRG, and again, I'll speak to them highly in the rank top. I don't want to say number one because they are number one, but KW part owners here. You're looking at 2 owners of the KW Des Moines area, which is a big feat on its own. Also a minority owner there in Junior, which just touting him and what he's done to gain that, I guess, that trust and that support as we move forward in larger developments. And for, I guess, the bigger picture, really, it's understanding how can we make things move forward in the development world, which is what you're talking about, Ryan, in your podcast, that allows a little bit of color. We want to develop for those that up color by color, because you don't see that. Not here in Iowa. I'm sure, Ryan, since you're down in Texas, you're seeing a lot more of that, which is awesome, and I'd love to dig into that with you at some other point offline here. But again, that's something that I think is really amazing and critical, especially at the time where a lot of the stats for growth in Iowa, specifically in this area, is trending towards a larger Latino population, and there's still a lot of distrust, in the government and how that process is out. And so if we can create a chance to break down those barriers, provide trust, and be maybe a part of that success, as far as representing those organizations like Home Inc., like Invest DSM, IFA, IDEDA, and really show that we can be a part of something bigger other than just selling homes, which is nothing, not a negatives, but because they are, again, still in that at great capacity to those of color within the Latino community at high numbers, above 300. It's just, how can we be a part of the other side of that story so that there's kind of a full circle there.
Yeah. So where are we? I guess where are you sitting today with your company? So we kind of talked through the past and the stories of getting to where we're at. So what are we looking at today as far as your like number of team members and things like that with what you've built?
Yeah, so we have 30 people now on the team. You know, when you, like I mentioned earlier, 15 residential partners, right? And then we have the operation side of things, and like I mentioned, listing coordinators, marketing coordinators, transaction coordinators, all to add value in the partnership we have with our residential partners. And now also, what we're seeing the opportunity in commercial is commercial has always kind of been just like a commercial agent, right? And not integrating quite as much the technology and back end infrastructure. So little by little, we're finding it harder to replicate in commercial, just because every deal is so unique and there's a lot more governance and a lot more time. So in order to like create those systems, Ryan can speak to that more. It's just a little harder, right?
Yeah. I mean, commercial, I always think it's been more project management based than a repeatable process, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're finding out, at least for some of the stuff that you're doing right now. But I'm sure, eventually that we will have those in place as we do more and more.
Yeah. So then now we also have what we, client care coordinators, which are also like from all over the world. Like we have people that are bilingual, working with our team from Honduras and Venezuela and Spain and the Philippines, and adding support from that angle, because we're also learning that in the tech-driven world, the way the industry is evolving is a lot of it having to do with our phones being in front of our faces for a large portion of the time, and how consumers want to interact. And right now it's heavy in residential, yet it'll move towards commercial. Watch, right? Like just because the generations are evolving and whatnot. And right now the average age of a commercial agent is above 55 or 60 in most states. So it'll transition that direction too. But in residential in today's world, if you click on an ad, if a consumer's watching Netflix and has the mindset of buying a home within the next year to 2 years, they're probably looking at some thing on Zillow or Realtor.com or something else, and that catches the cookies, and now it's popping up on Facebook and on their Amazon or whatever, right? And they're going to click on something that catches their attention, right? Like I call it the stop to scroll concept, right? Our brains can analyze at a lot quicker speed than before. And so I don't know if you've ever caught yourself on Facebook just scrolling at rapid speeds of light, and then something catches your attention, you actually stop and then like flick to the right for a few more pictures because it caught your attention. And then you're like, oh, I like that more. Like click, get more information, right? They gotcha. And now it's like,
Gotcha.
What's the speed to lead? And because we know that 90% of consumers will work with the first agent they talk to. So we figured out like, well, what are other teams, how are other teams reacting, and how do we increase our speed to lead, which is how we have our client care coordinators. And then we have backups to backups, like, so that we are able to talk to that consumer and be one of the first to talk to them. And that'll evolve as well in the commercial world. We're kind of starting to build that out a little bit in the commercial world, which all translates into the land development and everything else, and reverse engineer everything from there too, right? So how does that evolve? And you've entered that space, right?
Right.
On how the lead flow and how how do you make data available to everyone, right? In a development world.
Right.
So
yeah. So it seems like the path is kind of this vertical integration of just different steps. I mean, you've got the processes that are being built, and then going all the way down to the development level of finding the land, developing the land, and then obviously you have the team and everything in place to be able to sell the homes that are built and everything like that as necessary and everything. So I mean, it's very impressive what you guys have done. I love stories like this because as I have said on here before, I'm on my own journey, and so like I love to see people win. And I also have that abundance mindset of I'm not, even when people are in the same space as I'm in, I cheer for them. I want to see them succeed. And so when I hear you guys' story and everything, and Manny, with you kind of coming into the mix and us connecting and everything, we joked before we turned on the mics and started recording that, should we introduce you as the connector? And, honestly, that was my first intro to you. And it was probably back in, I think, the the very beginning of 2021, and since then, I mean, just randomly intro emails will come into me from somebody that I should talk to, and that's happened consistently over the last 3 years and everything. And so I think it's pretty amazing. Like all of your guys' superpowers and everything are just it's awesome, and they fit together so nicely and everything. And so yeah, I really appreciate you guys sharing the story and kind of walking through all of that. If you guys are good with it, I'd like to shift into our lightning round, where we'll dig into. We got 5 questions here that we'll go into. And
Lightning.
Yes. And we will give you 60 seconds to answer it. No trick questions here. They're just straight up questions. But the idea is just to have quick thoughts, short answers. And I'm not going to call on you guys. So you guys are going to have to decide. You have to decide who wants to answer
that one.
Yeah, you guys can. You guys can decide. I think what I did last time in here is I just turned on my timer on here to give you an idea of how long it's been, and I just do a stopwatch and I'll just hold it up, and we all can see. I'm not fancy with the timer tech yet on the show. So, all right, first one here is I guess timely, just related to 2024. I'm curious what you think is in store for 2024 related to the economy.
Ryan, you take this one.
Ooh, okay. It's been a hard 4 years, I feel like, for everyone, right, in the country. I feel like, I think I told you this our last, when we did our analysis of the Des Moines market. I feel like we've gone through like the 5 stages of grief, and hopefully now we're on what's the last stage, Ryan? You know what it is? It's
Acceptance. I think that's what it is.
Is it?
Acceptance.
Yeah, I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
The acceptance of, okay, we've gotten through some stuff. Interest rates are where they're at.
They're
Now
never going to be 2.5
never
to
gonna be
3.5%. Never
again.
in our lifetime.
And now it's like, how do we move on with our lives and move forward, right? I know we have an election year this year, so who knows what that does. But still, I feel like we've gotten through, this is such a unique scenario in our lives, right? COVID just destroyed everything, right? And now I feel like we're getting on that path to acceptance.
So you're bullish.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I like it. All right. Next one. What's the biggest lesson learned that sticks in your mind from throughout your career? You guys can all take a stab at this one. I mean, you guys all have your own biggest lesson learned. Somebody want to go first?
Mine, I'll go ahead and start with that one, is just staying really focused. Like saying no, I've been learning more and more from other mentors who are very successful, is just one of the secrets to success is learning how to say no and ignoring the shiny object syndrome, right? And going after and staying really focused. Like, where are you at? And there are synergies to create verticals and this and that. Yet, how does it back intertwine into your core success, right? And what's building and continue to build on that foundation. And so, like, there's so many things. Just being a high energy person that always looking for opportunities is just being able to stay just super hyper focused and be known as someone who executes. Because I'm a big believer, like no matter if it's down to like showing up on time to an appointment, to waking up versus hitting snooze, you're subconsciously always saying, if you hit snooze, you're telling your subconscious that you're not winning for that, you're not executing on that, or like being on time to an appointment, right? But when you hit that, when you make it on time to that appointment, you gain that confidence, and you're subconsciously saying, I execute. I always execute, and I'm known to everyone else in my ecosystem as someone who executes, right? And so then just really honing in and just focusing in on what's in front of you, executing on that, and then moving on to the next thing has been one of the hardest lessons to learn.
Nice. When the other guys want to go?
Yeah. I mean, Ryan's thinking deep over there. I'll keep it simple. 3 things. Rejection is God's protection. I've been let go, fired, displaced twice for many different reasons, longer stories. If you guys want to have a coffee, reach out to me and we can talk about that, because it gets good conversation going. Second, continue to learn. I've just really taken, affiliation, or what is the word I'm looking for? Just a passion to reading and listening and just learning, because there's so much out there to gain and grow from. And I don't know anything, especially in the business world. And third is just trust your own. I mean, I'll say it this way: trust your wings and not the branch. You have what you need to succeed. and maybe being complacent, and sitting there, provides those levels of regret, unfortunately, on the back end. So that's what I have.
Dang, that was good, Manny. I like that. For me, I don't know. I think Junior kind of mentioned it before. Is just like the power of the people and like your strengths. Don't, I always thought of my weaknesses as bad, but I feel like that's where the people come into place, right? Junior's filling this void in me. Manny's filling this void in me, and we create this big person, right? Or whatever you want to call it. And I always kind of got down on myself, like, hey, I'm not a salesperson, right? Like I can't produce business, right? I kind of got down on myself for that, right? But then I'm like, well, if I help you make more sales, I'm kind of like sales.
That's right.
Helping a little bit more.
Yeah.
But just recognizing your strengths and really trying to boost other people's strengths by mine. So
Nice. All right, next one here. Let's see. Why entrepreneurship?
Ooh, that's deep.
Yeah.
Can I pull? Where's my phone? So
Do you have this answer written down already or
no,
something?
I literally took a screenshot of it this morning, and I feel like I'm gonna chop it all up. But this is Alex Hormozy's credit. The hardest part of entrepreneurship is the uncertainty that all your sacrifice will be for nothing. That we give up everything now for nothing later. But then you remember the life you walked away from to pursue your dream and realize there's no going back, so you keep going. The fact that you don't know if it's going to work is exactly what it makes it worth doing. It's why entrepreneurship isn't for the faint of heart. Embrace uncertainty. So that's my answer.
Yeah, I saw that post. That's deep. It's very true. Also, like if it was a sure thing, like what we're doing, if it was a sure thing that you were guaranteed to get exactly what you set out to get, I mean, it wouldn't be. Yeah,
The ride wouldn't be as fun
yeah,
or worth it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I love that. All right, two more here. What's one thing you think that the real estate industry needs to get better at?
I mean, I feel like like I said, there's a lot of players involved. I feel like there's a lot of streamlining that could happen. Make transparency in the transaction, because everyone thinks no one knows what's going on, all that stuff, right? I mean, I don't know. I think technology will help us get there too, is give more transparency, more automations, let us do our jobs better too, and also give that consumer a better experience. So I feel like it's getting there. It's just realizing what those problems are.
Yeah.
And to add to that, I think just a lot more education for those that are going to be the real estate entrepreneur or the real estate advisor, and take it from being a sales agent to being a real estate advisor. Like, take it up to that notch of being a financial advisor or a CPA. And I don't know how you necessarily do that, because there's that entrepreneurship component to it. Yet just a lot more information so that you can empower people to make informative decisions, and the transparency within that, but also just taking that level of professionalism out there. So you can provide the consumers and the community the best information possible, so that they can make one of the biggest investment purchases of their life, right? I don't know. I would add to that.
Yeah, mine's simple, and I mean, you're kind of alluding to it. It's that fifth bucket that I think Alex Hormozy is really going to dive into in his book. But I think it's geared for anything in sales with regards to B2B or person to person. It's affiliations. It's just relationships, and affiliations is what's going to drive the next generation of business leaders. Successful, wealth builders, and so being able to go to you, Ryan, here with your team, and connect with a company down in Texas to mastermind, growth within a community, and how you bring other players into that. Maybe it is that team out of Utah. It's all affiliations and understanding, who has what in what lane, and then just moving forward together.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good, all you guys. I think we'll wrap it up there. Again, I really appreciate all of you guys joining, and I think the last thing from you is just what's the best way for people to connect with you individually and company as well. Maybe go around the room here, around the mics, and whoever wants to go first as far as contact, whether it's social media or if you want to give out other information. Like,
Yeah, no, I got just for me, it's just a simple email to our email, which could be provided here by Ryan, Manny at ibarrarealtygroup.com. But also just very simply for engineering needs, that's mtoribio at sh.com, which is still a critical need for all development, as Ryan knows over there. And then just simply 319-331-5542. Just give me a call and we'll text me and we'll set up a time for a mastermind over coffee there at Chain and Spoke off Ingersoll.
Love it. I always love when phone numbers come up on here. Get some calls. Call
Is
them.
that a real phone
Call
number?
them.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll get a real person.
Yeah, I mean, same with me, Ryan at ibarrarealtygroup.com or hit us up at info@ibarrarealtygroup.com if you have general questions, financing questions, anything that's real estate related. You can always email that. One of us will answer and get back to you.
Yeah, with me, give me a call. I love rubbing shoulders or getting on Zoom and masterminding and creating energy with people. So go ahead and call me directly or shoot me a text directly to my business cell, which is 515-988-3227. If you want to connect online, Jorge Jr. Ibarra on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I am putting a lot more content out there. Our YouTube channel is TuiMyRG, and we're actually putting market stats out there, and very soon here more commercial and development stats too, and maybe we could, create some synergy with you on that. But a lot of educational content on YouTube for TuiMyRG for our local metro market.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for everybody tuning in and listening to this episode. Definitely reach out to these guys, and that's all we got for today. So we'll talk to you next time.